So I have a question to start off with. Where is your essence housed? We might call it your soul or your life force. Where is it housed? In here? Somewhere in your heart, in our bodies. It moves in and through our bodies. So if we destroy this house, can we replace it in this lifetime? And I'm not here to talk about whether I think there's other lifetimes or not, but I'm just talking right now, the way we know life, if we were to destroy this house, could we get another one that looks like this? No. We might get a new hip or a new knee or a new heart or a new kidney. We can get new parts, but the whole thing, the way we're housed, cannot be replaced in this lifetime. So if we think about this beautiful house that our essence is living in, what houses it? Some of you might be picturing your home, but whether we have a permanent home or not, whether we have a house or an apartment, or whether we're sleeping somewhere out under the stars because we don't have a house, the earth, this planet, is what houses us, is our home. Right? Okay. And as of now, there is no other place that we can rocket off to and live in the way that we have become accustomed to and have this body, this being, be supported in the way that we're used to having it supported. Right? As far as we know. So where then is this planet housed? In the galaxies within the universe. And again, I'm not here to debate how many galaxies there are, so I'm just going to use the word universe. That whole universe is housing this planet, that houses this body, that houses the essence of who I am. And so when I refer to the universe, we might be picturing stars and planets, but I also think about the allness. Or sometimes we could refer to it as the mind of God or God itself. The wholeness that moves in and through all things. That's that essence that's of life within me, and it's within all things, and it's the wholeness that all of this is housed within. So for some of you, I might be speaking the obvious. And yet I realized as I started thinking about this idea of coming home in spirit, I started to realize that there are times when I treat this house like it was replaceable. And sometimes I live on this planet as if it was replaceable, or as if I really wanted to be somewhere else. And so I started to think about and realize that there is no plan B. Now, the first time I saw that sentence, I was walking down a hallway at NMSU, and one of the geographers had a bumper sticker that's next to her door that says there is no plan B. And I'm like, what is she talking about? And I had to think about it, and then I started realizing, oh, I get what she's talking about. And then I thought, in terms of what we believe, if all we have is this plan A, which is this body on this planet in this universe, part of the one, the wholeness, then there is no other plan. If it's all part of the one, there is no other. There's just the one. So I started thinking, well, plan A could be called plan allness. Isn't that cute? Plan A can stand for plan allness. There is no plan B when we think about, again, our bodies, the planet, the expression of life force as I know it for myself. And so as I was thinking about this, I have a binder that I write notes in, and I know what the different topics for the months are, and I jot down ideas as I have them related to those topics. So I wrote in there for this month, there is one God, one giant universe, one planet, one life as we know it. I am one of the one inside the one inside one. All potentiality occurs in the one. Within this one, each one of us gets one home in which we physically and metaphysically have our one being, our home, our part of the allness. And so I thought about that wholeness and being part of the one. And then I thought, I'm going to read what today's Science of Mind magazine has to say because I was done writing in my book. And this is the way the universe works. And I know it works this way for a lot of people. I got to get the right one. The right one. This was from April, Science of Mind, because I was thinking about it back then. And I read, one life behind all that lives. One, never two. The unity of all life. To learn this is to know a secret of the ages. And that was Ernest Holmes from the Science of Mind text on page 493. To me, that was a confirmation that I was on the right track. How could I get any clearer of a message? And what was interesting to me is that this was written on a day which she titled Interconnected. And the story along with this is from those daily readings in the Science of Mind magazine, and the story with it had to do with redwood trees. And I didn't know that redwood trees don't have roots as deep as they are high, because I always thought trees had roots as deep as they were high. But redwood trees don't. Apparently they only go about 6 feet deep. Their roots go out. And that's why she said we have so many trees that come together, their roots intertwine, and that's what keeps them standing. And it's that interconnectedness that keeps a redwood tree from falling over. And she, of course, likened that to how we are interconnected, that we all have our roots connected to each other, and that's what helps us to do things that we might not be able to do otherwise, and that's what keeps us upright, so to speak. So I thought that was interesting, that not only did I get the affirmation that we are all part of the one and there is nothing other than the one, but I also saw it in conjunction with not just this being, but how I'm connected to all of you and to everyone around me and out in the world. So as I continued to contemplate coming home in spirit, it became apparent to me that that means I need to come home to my plan A, to my allness. And I started wondering, how would it feel to accept and even rejoice in this plan A? To not be fighting against its weight, its desires, its aches and pains, but to actually feel at home in this thing that houses me. How would that feel? And then I started wondering how it would feel to feel at home on this planet, to not constantly long for freedom from the things that we as humans have to experience, but rather to experience my life on this planet as freeing, to be able to experience that as I walked on this planet. How would it feel to feel at home with plan A, with the allness that I am and that I have? And so one of the things I realized is I think in order for us to feel at home, we have to know what home means to us. Years ago, I lived with someone who said to me one night, I just don't ever feel at home anywhere. And being the person that I am who always tries to make everything very homey, I was like, well, how could she not feel at home in my house, So I said, well, what does home mean to you? What would it mean to you to feel at home? And she said, I don't know. And then I realized, and I thought, well, how could she know if she was at home or felt at home if she didn't know what that felt like, if she had no idea what that would mean to her to feel at home? And so I ask you, what does feeling at home, what does being at home mean to you? What does home mean to you? Is it a place? Is it a location? Is it a structure? Is it a feeling, an experience, or a state of mind, or all of the above? What does that mean to be at home? Having a home is such an integral and significant part of our experience that Ernest Holmes actually wrote about it several times in the textbook Science of Mind. He also gave us several examples of how to treat, to have one, or to create one in our lives. So I found that rather interesting. And one of the things he said when he talked about the most effective ways to treat or to create what we want in our lives, he said, just as we must plant a seed before we reap a harvest, so we must believe before our prayers are answered. Let us take the mental images of our desires to the bosom of the creative life And here, make them known by impressing them upon it with positive belief. If we do this, our prayers will be answered. So there again, I had that affirmation that we need to be able to know what it is to know that we've got it. We need to be able to visualize what does home mean to us before we'll know that we're actually feeling at home there. So of course, the next thing I started doing was wondering, well, what does home mean to me? So for me, home is where I can feel safe and secure. It's a place I can go to rest and rejuvenate. It's a place where I experience peace. It's also a place where I feel like I belong. It's where I can let my hair down, where I can be comfortable, where all of the various titles that we might have accumulated, whether it's Mr. or Mrs., Doctor, Reverend, whatever title, teacher, whatever those titles are, fall away as we are home. It's us. It's just the essence of who we are, our true essence and being. It's a place where I can be playful. And it's a place where I experience love, and hopefully I experience unconditional love. And so as I started thinking about all of those things that I visualized as being home, I realized that the ideal place, the place where I experience all of that all together, is in spirit. When I move myself into that place of aligning with my true nature and my spirit. So that's why I asked Teresa to read what she did this morning, and I want to read it again so that you can hear it in the context of being home. I dwell in the house of love. My dwelling place is filled with peace and eternal calm. Love attends me in my house of the soul, and joy awaits upon me in the secret place of the Most High. My house is built for me by the hand of love, and I shall never leave this home of the Spirit, for it is always present. I shall abide in this home forevermore. My house is a house of love. Just let that sink in for a moment. So how many of us can really say that we feel that way about being at home in spirit? Maybe we have moments when we get there. I know for myself, there are times when I feel that way. And then there are other times when I feel like my house has gotten pretty cluttered. Cluttered with stuff that I might not need anymore, cluttered with old ways of thinking. And that's not just my spiritual and mental home, but even my house gets cluttered. You know, what do we do? I started asking myself, what choices are we making that help us to regard or keep up our home, whether it's our physical home, the home we dwell in, or our spiritual home, that place in spirit? How are we keeping it clear and uncluttered and taking care of it? We don't have to look far to find stories and myths and examples, whether they're your personal ones or your stories or experiences that your friends might have had. When we look at this ideal of home, and then we see the story talks about leaving home. Often you leave home for a while, you go out and have a great adventure, and then eventually returning home, realize that all along, everything you went out there seeking, you carried with you and had with you the whole time. Does that sound like a familiar storyline? Yeah. In this book, Falling Upward, A Spirituality for the Two Halves of Life, and this is a book about how to gracefully move beyond 50 and 60 and 70 and all those wonderful years. So falling upward in the end of life. He talks about in the introduction the story of Homer's tale, The Odyssey, that was written in 700 BC. And in this story, the hero has left and gone to the Trojan War and then is returning home. And he has different ways that he's making equations between what this person experiences and how we can learn from that. And he wraps it up with, home is both the beginning and the end. Home is not a sentimental concept at all, but an inner compass and a North Star at the same time. It is a metaphor for the soul. And so I'm sure all of you are familiar with The Wizard of Oz. There's no place like home. And she also wasn't very happy with what was going on at home. So she takes off. She didn't intend to go on quite the adventure she went on, but she went on a great adventure, brought color into her life, taught her a lot of things. And when she got back home, she had a different appreciation for what hadn't changed, what was still the same, but she had changed. And so she had a different look and a different appreciation for what she came home to. And so, again, I was telling Teresa this morning, I kept putting this talk together and then finding more and more and more. So I didn't even share with you half of what kept showing up to me as examples of what it means as we think about coming home in spirit. This is out of February Science of Mind magazine. And there's an article in here where they're interviewing a man, Pico Iyer, and it's called Destination to Nowhere. And apparently this individual is a celebrated travel writer and journalist who has logged more than 1.5 million air miles as of the last count. So I thought, here's this guy who's traveled all over the place, been away from home a lot. And this is what he said: "Home is not where I live, but what lives inside me. Home has really less to do with a piece of soil than you could say with a piece of soul." I thought that put it really well. And then this month's Science of Mind magazine has an actual article called Coming Home. And it's written by Reverend Masando. And Reverend Masando is one of our youngest ministers, one of those who is going to be shown. We finally got the actual DVDs of the conference. We'll be showing some of them on June 8th here in the evening. And he's the first one that you'll see, Reverend Masando, and what he had to say. He used to live in Colorado, and then he came down and was actually at the Albuquerque Center for a while, and he has since returned back up to Colorado. And he talked about leaving Colorado for the first time and saying that he'd never felt like he was going to be able to go home again. It wasn't so much that I was never going to physically come back to Colorado. It was more of a sense that I was embarking on a journey that would forever change the way I felt about home. And he talks about what happened in his 20s and the things that he learned as he traveled, and then he concludes with, "So as I write these words, adventuring back to Colorado, I feel all of the lessons flooding back to me so that the familiar can stay new." I love that idea. The familiar can stay new so that home stays here within. Whether you realize it or not, we are always coming home. I don't know why I'm dry, but sorry. So part of coming home then, I think, means that we need to know what home means to us, first of all. And then there's this idea that we leave home at some point, go on a great adventure, let life do what it does, and eventually we come back around and come home in some way. And when we're talking about spirit, I think that's part of what happens for us too sometimes. We take off on a great adventure, we explore, we do all kinds of things, and eventually we find what feels like coming home to us. And it reminded me of a story that I heard back in my high school days when I was going to a Presbyterian church at the time. And in that story, they talk about an old violin that's up for auction. And this old violin is dusty and broken. The string, some of the hairs on the thing are broken. And the strings on it are flimsy. And the auctioneer holds it up and says, "What am I given for this old violin?" Somebody goes, $1, $2, $3. And then somebody gets up who's there in the auction and comes up and dusts off this violin, tightens up and tunes the strings, pulls off the broken hairs of the bow, tightens the bow, and starts to play a beautiful melody on the violin. And when this person is finished, the auctioneer holds up the violin. "Well, what am I given for this old violin?" $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. And the way it was told to us back then was that our worth is always increased by the touch of the master's hand. And so I was thinking about what that would mean to us metaphysically. And as we come home in spirit, that's where the master's hand resides. And as we do that adventuring, that's how we clear off and clean off the old dust. That's how we figure out who we really are. We get tuned up. And then we allow the master to play through us masterfully. Spirit just plays us in life masterfully through us. And so I thought, what a beautiful metaphor that was, because our value is enhanced when we come home in spirit. So, as we talk about coming home and being at home or comfortable in plan A, in the allness, I couldn't help but thinking about this place that we call our spiritual home here at the Center for Spiritual Living, and what that would mean to us here. In Las Cruces, we do have some options for where to go to celebrate and to learn about and participate in new thought. So it might seem like there is a plan B and a plan C, and we can just go around between here and Unity and Wellspring and other places. And that's only if we're looking outward for home, I think. But as we're looking inward and we think about the oneness that we find when we go within, I see it more as there is only one, and we have different rooms in the house, so to speak. I'll let you figure out which room belongs to which center. I'm just kidding. But I believe that Jesse Jennings put it really well. Again, this is this month's Science of Mind magazine. And he was asked if it was okay or dangerous to sort of venture out beyond what the teaching is that we have here. This person was interested in something else. And so Jesse has this whole answer that he gives, and he concludes with, the path you're on, now possibly mundane and boring to you, carries the same potential mystery and magic as whatever they're doing any other place you consider enticingly exotic. Alchemy, the Grail quest, candomblé, you name it, all are about knowing the self. There is no outrunning the wonderful, freeing truth that no matter where you go, there you are. And so I also could say, home is wherever you are, or home is where your heart is, wherever you take your heart and your center. And so I have another question for you. Did anyone grow up in a home where everybody agreed on everything all the time? Anyone? From which way the toilet paper rolls off the roll, to the levels of cleanliness within the house, to those discussions that you have around the dinner table. Did everybody always agree? Or was it just, okay, good. When I grew up, some of those discussions around the dinner table got really, really heated. I grew up when my aunt was going to Berkeley in the 60s. So you can imagine some of the conversations that were going on. And I remember some heated discussions around interracial marriage at that time, women's rights and what was happening in that movement, our involvement in Vietnam, just to name a few. Easy conversations that were going on. No, actually, they could get quite involved and quite heated. And as a child, I would just watch this go on at the table. Our family has evolved into a place where we don't discuss certain things, religion being one of them. But one of the things I noticed in my family is when it came to the end of the day, and when it came to the end of life, literally, those people who had fought vehemently over the dining room table ended up caring for each other. That home and love was bigger than any of those issues that was ever brought up at any of our dinner tables. I want to share something with you. I have a brother that was placed for adoption when I was 7. He found us when he was 18. And he was raised in a Mormon home, and he's become a part of our family in addition to the family he was adopted by. And he wrote this about our family after he met us. Thus, I've learned to love, even if on certain topics we agree to disagree. Just look at our family: agnostic, atheist, Sikh, lesbian, straight, Mormon, Mexican, French, African American, Indian, Christian Science, religious science, liberal professor, Marine, handicapped, divorced, adopted, athletic, non-athletic, vegetarian, meat lovers, etc. It's a wonder we even communicate, much less love. But we've all made the commitment to love, and I find that wonderfully invigorating. Thanks for loving me as I am, Eric. And that was given to all of us in our family by my brother. So my family is a microcosm of the macrocosm of the world. This center is a microcosm of the macrocosm of the world. And in here, you'll find all different ways of thinking and being, beliefs, past histories in our lives. And yet, we have a community commitment here that says we will treat each other lovingly, gently, and with respect. How many of you had lovingly, gently, and respectful treating households when you grew up? Some? Yeah, some of us did. Good. So here, one of the things we do have in our bylaws is that we will not do anything on a political level that tries to shift or change legislation in any way. But that doesn't mean that we can't have discussions. My thing is we need to do it lovingly, gently, and with respect. And we need to listen to each other. I started thinking about how for most of us, when we adventure away from home and we go out into the world, we learn new things. We're exposed to different ways of thinking. We're exposed to different ideas and ways of living. And I think, at least for me, that when we come to a place that says we're going to treat each other lovingly, gently, and with respect, it is a bit different than what we might have grown up with. If you grew up that way, you're the leaders. You're the ones that can show us how to do it. For me, it's a radical difference from the kind of things that sometimes occurred around the dinner table. It wasn't gentle. So what we're doing here at the center, I believe, is radical love. It's a radical change. It's a way that we can make a difference, not just here, but out in the world, as we learn to treat each other lovingly, gently, and with respect. And as we come home in spirit, when we come back to that place where we recognize our oneness, in that place, we no longer need to have that desire to constantly change or whatever. We feel more secure. When we're at one with Spirit, we have that peaceful, safe foundation. We don't have to force or condemn or judge. We don't have to run away from. We don't have to separate ourselves from others. We can engage with each other when we come home in Spirit. So I was looking then for how is it that we can be at home? How can we find that happiness in plan A, in the plan of allness? How can we find a way to stay centered in that space so that we can interact with each other lovingly, gently, and with respect? Recently, someone brought to my attention something called the 5-step secret to happiness. And I'm going to go through it quickly, so if you want to look it up for the in-depth description of it, you can. The 5-Step Secret to Happiness by Sean Achor, I believe, A-C-H-O-R. He has a TED Talk, and he's a Harvard-trained happiness researcher. Wouldn't that be fun to research happiness? I think that would be great. He has 5 steps that you can do. The first one is spend 2 minutes a day writing 3 things that you're grateful for. So you take 2 full minutes to write about 3 things that you're grateful for. The second thing is you spend 2 minutes a day watching your breath. So that's when we're connecting with Spirit. We go within and we do that breathing. 2 minutes. That's not that long, actually. Every day, journal about 1 positive experience you've had in the last 24 hours. So every day, take some time to journal about 1 positive experience you've had in the last 24 hours. The fourth one is 15 minutes of cardio exercise a day. I think I could handle 15 minutes. I haven't thrown that in yet, but 15 minutes I might be able to do. And there we are working again on this part of the allness, the physical that we've been given. The fifth one is express kindness through a text, email, or letter for 3 minutes a day and send it to someone different every day. So you're expressing kindness that you're going to send out to someone else. I was reading another book, and Byron Katie's idea is do 3 nice things for people a day without getting found out. If they find you out, you have to do another one. So you want 3 a day where no one finds it out. So either way, the idea is you're taking that kindness, you're taking what you have and giving it out then on the 5th step. Doing these things, I believe, will help us to come home in spirit, to stay more home and secure in the spirit that we are, will help the truth of who we are to be expressed. And so I'm going to ask the practitioners to surround the room now, because I'm going to do my final reading as our closing. Just surround this room with your thoughts, your energy. These are more words of Ernest Holmes that I thought just really wrapped this up, so you might want to take them within. I will listen for thy voice, inner presence. It will guide me and acquaint me with all knowledge. Thy voice is sweet and tender. It is always kind and gentle. O lover of my soul, how I adore thee, how I love thee, how I love thy voice. It thrills me with gladness and joy. It fills me with peace and calm, and it soothes me. It quiets me and gives me wonderful rest. Oh, listen, divine speaker, I listen to thee alone. I listen for thy voice. Joy has come to live with me. How can I be sad? I do so love thy presence, which is joy within me. It makes me glad and I sing, for I am so filled with thy spirit that I cannot be depressed or unhappy. I am filled with the joy of the Spirit, and I overflow with the gladness of life. Thou art a happy companion to travel with me through life. Wonderful joy. Thou art so radiant and beaming. It is impossible to be sad in thy presence. I shall give myself to thee and remain with thee, for thou art complete and satisfying. I find fulfillment in thee and joy forevermore. I am filled with the spirit of joy. O love divine within me, I am overpowered by thy presence. I am speechless, for words cannot utter the things that thou hast revealed to me. Why dost thou love me so, and why clasp me so close to thy eternal heart? O blessed presence, I know, for thou hast claimed me as thine own. I shall never more walk apart from thee. The love of God is within me. I am home in spirit. I am home with Plan A, and so it is.